Northern Territory juvenile justice often hired the wrong people and poorly prepared them to deal with a daily crisis situation, the former Corrections Commissioner has told the Royal Commission. However, Ken Middlebrook also defended his years overseeing the crisis-plagued juvenile sector, saying he was unaware of the behavior of guards such as Conan Zamolo, who filmed himself making a detainee eat bird feces. Between 2012 and late 2015, when he was set to resign after a run of custodial escapes, including by a convicted ex-murderer erroneously placed on a work camp, Middlebrook oversaw dozens of high-profile incidents inside juvenile detention, including the 2014 tear-gassing of teenage detainees. "Sometimes we had the wrong people in the job," he said. "But there was little choice because they needed staff on the ground quickly." Middlebrook conceded his managers were extremely stressed during that period, and we didn't prepare people well to proceed into those roles. Whether it was right or wrong, we were responding to that destructive and disruptive behavior time and time again. But fixing problems often created new ones because of the limited funds, he said. "It was a crisis situation which just occurred every day and we couldn't seem to get in front of." He said his lightbulb moment was seeing the level of violence a young person inflicted on a youth justice officer who opened the door to give the detainee a Panadol. "These kids were actually intimidating youth justice officers, and we hadn't trained them to deal with that," he said. He said managers never told him they needed more staff to deal with the number of children being put in the BMU isolation cells. Middlebrook also said he was unaware of Zamolo forcing detainees to eat bird feces until he heard the allegation at a youth justice conference. At the time he felt he had been set up by lawyers from the North Australian Aboriginal Justice Agency, NAJA, and the ABC, but now accepted he should have said he would investigate it. "How can I act on it if I didn't know about it?" he said. "If I had any knowledge or inkling that was the sort of behavior which went on, I wouldn't have accepted it and I would have made professional standards look at that." He agreed his lack of knowledge of a since-proved incident indicates there has been a dramatic systems failure, and reflected a culture inside the center. He said he grew to have concerns about the sort of muscle-bound type officers were starting to be attracted into youth justice. Middlebrook said he was embarrassed to be leading a system locked people up at one of the highest rates in the world, and showed a graph of incarceration rates rising at a rate eclipsing population growth. He suggested it correlated with the beginning of the anti-intervention and an increase in police officers and stations in indigenous communities. If there had been community corrections officers or housing community corrections officers in those communities where there were police stations, we might have made a difference, he said. Middlebrook said he had showed the graph to both Labour Minister Jerry McCarthy and his successor, John Elferink, on a regular basis, to show them the result of their focus on law and order and mandatory sentencing. "But quite often I would get back, Mr. and Mrs. Malik expect this. You can only do so much in trying to influence government policy," he said. "I think most politicians live in a 4-year cycle, and they're thinking about being re-elected again, and they want to be popular in the community." Middlebrook said McCarthy had a genuine interest in trying to change infrastructure, to do infrastructure improvements, including the juveniles. The difference, I think, of the two ministers I worked for is Minister McCarthy had a lot of the support from his chief minister and his treasurer, where I don't believe from where I was observing. My former minister, Elfering, had the same level of support to try and do those changes within the system. At the end of the day, we were an organization that was struggling for money, struggling for resources. In the 2014/15 financial year, the Corrections Department was asked to find savings of 1315M. That really brings you to your knees, he said. Middlebrook sought to tap into the SPOK 30M funding allocation to a new alcohol mandatory treatment center but was unsuccessful. The new government also made it pretty clear a secure mental health facility built into the new adult jail would not be funded. Operation. He said he had a number of conversations with Elfering about funding requirements, but when he estimated about 12M was needed, Elfering said, "Dude, you're not going to get that because there was no way cabinet would support it." Middlebrook was also questioned on how he responded to increasing drug use among detainees. While he was confident it had led to a lot of behavioral issues, Middlebrook was unaware of any exploration of testing or detox programs. Probably in hindsight that would have been appropriate, he said. There are a lot of things in hindsight I've thought about since 2015 when I finished. I probably could have done differently. He also expressed regret over the way a casual employee accused of assault was handled in 2010. Harold Morgan was not stood down at the time, and an internal investigation by the Professional Standards Unit was cancelled when police launched their own. Middlebrook said a full-time employee would likely have been suspended. The period of the investigation. It's difficult to actually get staff to fill the post, and I thought that by just terminating that position, that he was gone.